Hello, continuing from the previous video, and just as an orientation to anybody who clicked on this randomly, I am reading through the edit history of the Wikipedia page of the church that I was raised in. Very tiny, rather not notable cult. Anyway, and I'm using it as a jumping off point to talk about my experiences in this group and talk about how my thoughts have changed since then. Again, this is looking at the initial edit, first entry ever for Niscience on Wikipedia from 2007. And I know it seems silly to be reading something that's not even, front-facing anymore, but, somebody wrote this, somebody thought it appropriate for others to hear and see, and for that reason I want to respond to it and break it down, talk about my experiences of these concepts, because I grew up in it, and yeah. Anyway, if you've been watching, you know what's going on. Last sentence in the paragraph under philosophy, the heading under philosophy of this entry. To effect this healing, effect with an E, well done, the members of Niscience make use of powerful spiritual tools: meditation, prayers, fasting, giving, most particularly tithing, pilgrimage, attending meetings, writing talks, recording and learning from one's dreams, creativity, and more. Now, what's great about this list is that it has such a mix of things that I like and don't like, And so this to me kind of like exemplifies the sort of like good intentions to shit execution, or like some valid premises and then moon logic, to borrow a phrase. Meditation. Okay. Meditation actually, I think, is pretty great. I say this as a secular, agnostic, atheist person. I think meditation is something I don't do enough of, and I want to do more of. I see meditation as a way to still my own mind, not to tap into anything greater than myself outside my mind, but to simply still my mind and get better at observing my thoughts as distinct from myself, which is all really healthy stuff. From a secular perspective, I think, from a neurological, science-based, evidence-based perspective, this kind of thing can be really good. You don't have to think about religious concepts if you don't want to. You can, sometimes it's simple breathing. So, like, meditation, so far so good. I wouldn't call it a spiritual tool. I'd call it a tool. I'd call it a tool that one has in managing oneself and improving oneself and, just being an initiate as a human. Prayers. Okay. This is where I draw. This is where I say no. This is where, of course, like, you're not actually doing anything. Here's the thing. It's true that you cannot prove whether or not prayers have an effect, because even though they did some experiments showing that when these people were prayed for, they didn't show any better signs of recovery than those people who weren't prayed for, it's somewhat contrived. And it doesn't tell us much, because it's just like, yeah, there was no difference. It doesn't say that prayers don't do anything. It certainly doesn't say that they do anything. But it doesn't say that they don't do anything. But what's often pointed to as very telling, not telling about the effectiveness of prayer, but about how human brains work, is that the groups of people who knew they were being prayed for ended up doing worse in their complications from whatever. I don't remember the study, but this is I'm not citing a source here just because this is off the cuff, and I think this is pretty common knowledge. Like, you can find this. It's been cited on TV shows and things. People who knew they were being prayed for did worse. Now, to me, that doesn't say that prayer does or doesn't do anything. But it does actually kind of tell me that somebody's state of mind whether or not they know they're being paid for, certainly in this case had a greater effect than the actual literal prayers that were said for them. And it shows me how, like, I really think it's an ineffective tool to even granting that prayers can be good, knowing that when people know they're being prayed for, they don't do as well, is a reason to not pray, or to certainly not tell anybody you're praying. I think the hypothesis is that people who know they're being prayed for, well, if they believe in prayer, they would start feeling a little bit of a pressure to be doing better. There's going to be an expectation that they'll do better. Like, people are praying for me. Yeah, I'm going to be a lot better because so many people are praying for me. Which, of course, backing up a little bit, like, why do we need to pray? Does God count the number of prayers and decide to heal the people who got the most? It makes no sense. But people who were prayed for and knew it, it's hypothesized, expected something to happen. And when things didn't happen, it made them stressed and created a cognitive dissonance in their mind. Of course, cognitive dissonance is this, the stress that comes from conflicting pieces of information. One piece of information is, people are praying for me, and therefore I should be doing better. And the other piece of information is, I'm not doing any better, right? Those can't coexist and be coherent. And our brains don't strive for truth, they strive for coherency. They want consistency. They want how they think to be consistent. That's how brains do. It's not, we aren't adapted or evolved or in any way really like leaning towards what's true. Our brains seek out what's consistent because that's what actually keeps us alive. Consistency and security and safety. Like, these are what keeps us alive and able to reproduce, which is basically what we evolved to do. So, rambling here. So, prayer, not a fan. Fasting. Here's an interesting one. So I've been all over the map on fasting. So I used to think that fasting was good, and when I joined the Krishna consciousness scene, the fasts were like, oh yeah, we did this. I remember we used to fast like every Saturday until dinner or something like that, which is actually cruelty. Abuse. Mild, but forcing your kids to fast until a certain... I don't remember how often we fasted. It was like every week or every other week for a little while. Another influence, I think, from Murro. Murro is a real monster, I have to say. I'll be getting into him a little bit more later. But he was... I know it's a big incendiary word to use, but the way I see him, when I listen to his voice, when at some point I was listening to a talk from him, this talk was so shaming and mean and self-indulgent in how much like stupid children he was treating us. And I'm sorry to use a slur, but like, I'm using it in the context of stupid or unintelligent being considered bad and or exploited. He treated us like these unintelligent children who needed to be shamed into behaving right. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. Fasting. Later on, I was exposed to the idea that fasting is a terrible idea. Why would you do that to your body? Your body needs nutrients. Why would you hold your breath for a long time? No. And so I was like, yeah, fasting, yeah, I don't think it's particularly good. But now I'm more of the mind of like, sometimes purposefully putting your body through a slightly stressful experience can have an effect that's ultimately beneficial. I'm willing to grant that and allow for the idea that fasting can be helpful. I could see how one would do it to keep a mindfulness of the fact that malnutrition and hunger exists in the world. I could see somebody wanting to do that simply so they can maintain their empathy and passion to help those people, or at least ability to, at the very least, empathy. You know, if I can't go out and do good in the world, I at least can try to maintain my empathy for people who across the world that I'll never meet, who look very different from me. You know, it's very easy to write them off and forget about them. But anyway, that's one reason why somebody could fast. There's various reasons why someone could fast, and not all of them are bad. So mixed one here. Giving, most particularly tithing. Oh boy. Giving is wonderful. I want us all to be more generous. I want humanity in general to become a more generous species. I want us all to get to a place where we don't have to fixate so much on getting our own needs met because they're met, and be able to think more about the well-being of those around us. The magical thing about that, of course, is if everyone cares about everyone cares about you. You will get your needs met because everyone around you cares that your needs are met. The people around you will get their needs met because you and everyone else cares that they get their needs met. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's getting shit done when they want to. When we have a high need for something in an emergency, we band together like nobody's business, and we can cooperate. We are capable of cooperating in a way that's mutually beneficial. You know, so giving is great. And in a world that's mostly run by neoliberal capitalism, you have to be careful about how and where you give your money. But I still, you know, I support it. I support it. Give your money. If you can't do money, you know, you can give your labor to organizations that are doing well. So doing good in the world, like giving is great. Tithing, however, is the opposite of great. I'm still mad. Very, very mad at my parents' financial irresponsibility. My dad didn't care enough, really, to make enough money. And I think he resented the fact that he had to make money, honestly. He, you know, he was raised owning class where, you know, the idea is that, you know, your assets should work for you so you can have a life of leisure, mostly. My dad kind of felt like he was basically programmed to feel entitled to a life of leisure. And, you know, whatever. I'm not actually judging him on that. I was kind of talking about my parents' financial insecurity, and, you know, my mom, I can't be too condemning of her because of her chronic illness and how much of her behavior or lack of behavior was simply a physical limitation of her illness. But neither of them were particularly financially responsible. And on top of that, we were tithing 10 and sometimes 20% of our income to Niscience. That's a lot of money. Now, it's impressive that they got to build this new building in like 94, whatever it was, without going into debt. They saved up years and years and years. And in normal circumstances, I love that idea, that people just waited, got the money together through collective effort. But stepping back, you know, I don't accept the idea of a church as a legitimate place to give money to. I don't want people to give their money to the churches. The churches don't do good things with the money. Sometimes they do, but they mostly sustain themselves. And as I will maintain constantly, most of the positive social functions that churches serve can be served elsewhere in ways that don't require people who are probably already economically oppressed to give more of their money to an organization that's not going to do anything meaningful with it. I know these are just opinions. Everybody's got one, but I'm expressing my pain at like the knowledge that my parents put tithing in front of my security. It speaks louder than any action or word. Well, it's an action, but it speaks louder than any word and almost any other action. like, when I think about it, it's like I don't even know how much my dad made at his highest, but like 1/10 to 1/5 of our income was going nowhere, in my opinion, doing nothing to benefit us. I mean, yes, churches provide a sense of community, and that's what we were paying for, in a sense. And that's what we got out of it, and that's what I believed for a long time I had, is that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and the fulfillment that one gets from it. I'm not denying that people get that out of it, and it's worth it, worth the money for them to get that fulfillment. But that fulfillment comes at what cost? What are the social costs and personal costs of these churches, any church existing, indoctrinating its youth with poison, telling people things that are untrue about the universe, about the world, perpetuating bigoted points of view. Like, that's not worth it. I don't want you to find fulfillment in a place that teaches those things and perpetuates those things. I don't. I want you to find fulfillment in a place that doesn't hurt people, that is based in reality. So I massively disagree with the idea of tithing as a tool for any kind of good. Pilgrimage. I like the idea of pilgrimage, though, and I think it is an idea that one can easily look at through a secular viewpoint, because everybody, I think, acknowledges that travel is a unique experience, especially travel with an intention. I have a friend who several years ago wrote their thesis in response to their experiences while traveling the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which I want to do someday, even as a non-Catholic. Like, that's the kind of thing where that's a pilgrimage. You go, you travel, you go somewhere foreign with a sort of a clear intention of it. I'm going to get this thing out of it. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Like, when you approach travel through a perspective of like personal growth and discovery, as long as you're not doing a shitty thing, as long as you're not appropriating other cultures and being shitty like that, which is a whole concept to get into. I really appreciate the idea behind pilgrimage. So that's cool. I like that. Attending meetings, any group you're part of, that's cool, I guess. Writing talks. Another thing that I thought was actually kind of cool about Niscience was, at least not all, but many people got the chance to give talks, like to the pulpit. Like, the pulpit was shared by many church members, and that was normalized, and that's kind of cool. Obviously, you had to toe the line. Like, if you couldn't disagree with anything that Murro or Colton said in this group. Like, you faced immediate backlash if you contradicted them in any way, which is why the successor to Murro, who I will not name because they're still alive, was kind of hounded out of the group, because they tried to transform some of these old, terrible patriarchal ideas and make the group slightly more palatable to thinking people, essentially. So that was cool. There's a sort of egalitarian, at least in theory, the idea that anybody in this group can come up and share things and share their experiences. That's kind of cool. So I like that. Recording and learning from one's dreams, actually, this is a great idea. I've heard, I don't do this enough, but I don't buy that you can buy Colton's book about dreams and understand what your dreams meant by reading her ideas, but I think that dreams speak in a language that has no key. You have to study your dreams over time and notice patterns and speculate about what they mean. It's the best we can do, which is not as satisfying as getting a book and saying, oh yeah, you dreamed about horses, so that means that you should quit your job or something. I pulled that out of the air, by the way. So we're agreed, actually, on dreams. Record those. Just don't try to interpret them with a dictionary or a reference book. Just interpret and appreciate your dreams on their own terms, because your dreams will have their own meaning, even though there are a lot of people do share experiences around dreams a lot, but your dreams are still unique to you. your brain is telling you something in a different language, and it's frustrating, but the very least you can do is write down what it says, and maybe you'll eventually learn a few words. Creativity and more. Okay, creativity, I'm in it for that. And that's a cool thing about them, is that they were all about creative expression. There was a lot of members wrote songs, hymns, I guess you could say, that the church almost entirely sang songs that were written by members and founders. We had this church book. It was all written by, all these songs were written by people in the room. You know, it's that's another kind of neat thing, now that I think about it. The focus on creativity and the idea of having church members really participate in the creative expression of the group. That's cool. Okay, I'm at the end of the philosophy paragraph, 3 videos in, and as I talk, I'm starting to wonder, where am I going with this? This might be tedious for me just to use every sentence as a prompt for me to riff, so I might not do that. But I might just upload these and see how they go, see if anybody responds to them. And again, if you like what I say, I appreciate a comment or a share or subscribe. You know, do your thing. You know, support me how you like. What I really want to know is if anything I say in these videos about this church I grew up in resonated with you or helped you in some way. I actually really want to know if anything I say convinces you of anything, because I'm not really trying to convince anybody of anything with these videos. This is really just a self-indulgent catharsis. But I do want to start crafting my channel. I do want to start putting out things that are relevant and accessible and speak to what people want to hear from me, or speak to things that I could offer to people. So feedback is wonderful. Please be nice. You know, anybody being mean in the comments is going to be banned. Be nice. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns if you're going to talk about me. If you know what my name used to be, please don't put it in the comments. I go by Azalea now. You can call me Azalea. Yeah, I basically want to hear about any reactions to this. If anybody managed to watch all 3 of the ones that I've done so far today, if they have, like, obviously something engaged you, because this is just me riffing. So if you liked what I said, I want to hear why. I want to hear if there's anything you want to hear more of, anything you want me to speak to. Were you in the group? Like, do I know you? Or maybe you left before I got large enough? Are you still in the group? Are you offended by what I said? Do you want to talk to me? Do you want to set the record straight or something? I'm really open to talking to anybody about this in a you know, a peaceful, respectful way. I want to, I guess, say that I want to show respect for people, kindness and consideration for people, while not showing respect for ideas. I don't respect ideas, except on their own merits. And I don't want people to take ideas too personally. I want to be able to criticize your ideas and even heavily trash your ideas while not trying to make you feel bad for holding them, because at the end of the day, brains are really silly, and it's a wonder we managed all this. You know, for all our intelligence, you know, brains are very weird, silly, capricious creatures, and we all have bad ideas. We are not evolved to be immune from bad ideas. In fact, having bad ideas often keeps us alive, or at least used to. If you thought that rustling in the bushes was a predator, and it wasn't, but you still ran, you still lived. So, I really want to stress that you are not your ideas. Your ideas are clothes that are not your body. You put them on your body, but they're not you. They're part of your style, and they're part of how people see you. But they aren't you. You can change clothes if you find out that something about your current clothes doesn't work, without changing you, without feeling like you are wrong, because you're not. I mean, now at this point I'm kind of speaking to a hypothetical believer or member of this church that is magically watching this. I want you to be able to believe me and accept my truth without defending your beliefs, without feeling like you have to defend the record or the good name of someone who's long dead. You don't have to stop believing in God or anything. You don't have to stop believing in the doctrines that Colton and Murro taught. I want belief to be compelled by the evidence. I want people to open their minds to new ideas and have their beliefs shown to them by evidence and reason. And I'm hoping that, maybe it's possible that somebody who knew me a long time ago can connect with. I'm trying to be very real in these. I'm trying to be very real. I'm trying not to be cruel. And I'm hoping that maybe some people will connect with this and maybe start to see the ways in which how they've seen the world up to now might not serve. And I know that, you probably want to serve the world. If you're a theist, a nice theist watching this, or if you're a Niscience member watching this, I believe that you want to serve the world. I believe that you are motivated by love. I'm also motivated by love, or at least I try to be. I also want to serve the world. And I have a perspective that goes against your experience. My perspective is that the group I was raised in has done long-lasting and irreparable damage to many, many people. Not just those born into it, but those who were in the group, those who were loved ones and family members of people who joined the group. And we weren't told to shun our friends or anything like that, but it wasn't particularly encouraged or enabled for us to maintain our relationship. I mean, for people who joined the group. I didn't join the group, I was born into it, but other people who joined the group, I got the impression that they weren't specifically discouraged from having their relationships outside the group, but there was so much of a focus on group activities and this underlying current of in-group, out-group, this group has the truth and other people don't, that it probably caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for people who were in the group for a time. They're like, Niscience says this about other people, but I have this friend who is this way, or whatever. I can't. That's maybe somewhat of not a wonderful example, but I'm saying that I believe that it caused a lot of harm to people who were not, who are now also ex-members, and I would go so far as to say that it's harmed people who are still members in ways they don't completely see. A lot of us are walking around with harm that we're not aware of. We've dealt with it for a long time, normalized it, and then when we start to unpack the harm, pry open the cracks a little bit, we find, oh my God, I've been hurt this whole time. That's how it's been for me a little bit, is over the course of a long time now of therapy on and off. I've always had this sort of weird relationship with the church, but now I'm starting to see it in starker terms. And it's taken me a long time to realize that. Even though I've long ago rejected the doctrines, for a long time I kind of just accepted it as like, I was born into a church, whatever. But A, just because a lot of people are born into a church doesn't mean it's okay or remotely normal. B, this wasn't any church. It was a self-defined denomination with esoteric and specific teachings that only came out of one or two brains. It was very insular. It had a lot of hallmarks of an actual cult, which is probably going to be worse for a person, although it's hard to compare, really hard to compare suffering. Anyways, more rambling from me. I want this kind of thing to end. This is why I'm here. I think groups like Niscience should never, ever have formed. I think nobody ever should have taken Ann Ree Colton seriously in anything she said. I think that, same with Murro, Jonathan Murro, I think nobody ever should have taken him seriously. I don't think my parents should have met. I think Colton did me a grave disservice by encouraging our parents to stay together when they shouldn't have been together. Staying together and scrambling their DNA and coming out with me and my sibling, who have been categorically and irreparably damaged by this group. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were other children born into this group who had similar experiences. So, anyway, this has been fun and interesting. Very curious to see if anything happens with these videos. They may just gather dust on the internet forever, but it was good to make them. Thanks for watching, if you're here. Where's the stop button?